Scott Holiday, and welcome back to Plus 2 Wrestling. Before I jump on my soapbox and talk about the best of wrestling in 2024, I have to do something I haven't done in a while. It's time to update the greatest, dumbest wrestling tournament. The rules of the greatest, dumbest wrestling tournament are simple. You try to have a match with whoever you draw in the tournament, and if you win, you move on. And if you can't have a match, well, then it will come down to the PWI 500. If you rank higher than them in that list, then you move on. Or you can move on if your draw retires. And this will be the first time that we have someone moving on in the tournament due to a retirement. We unfortunately have to say goodbye to Fred Dye, aka Freddie Mercutio. I got to actually work with Freddie. Freddie came to King of Trios, and I loved working with Freddie. Just the energy he brought into a locker room was worth booking him, despite the fact that he had one of the prettiest moonsaults I have ever seen. Freddie, I understand, is stepping away, and I'm glad he got to do it on his own terms. I'm very sad we didn't get to work together more, so I think I'm going to try to set something up so he can do something with this here channel. But that does mean that his opponent, Isaac Morales, will move on in the greatest, dumbest wrestling tournament, which means he will face the winner of Gianna Michael Enrico versus Devin Carter. So congratulations to Isaac Morales. You are the second person to move on in this tournament. It's time once again to give away my awards for the best wrestling in 2024. Quick reminders as always, this is my list. If you want to yell at me, you know where the comments are. Feel free. But these are my opinions, which means they are skewed by my views. And I honestly watch more AEW than I do WWE. I watch AEW week to week. I watch WWE basically just based on premium live events and the occasional Raw. I'll drop in every now and then on TNA, on NXT, on ROH, and of course, all the indie wrestling that I'm constantly absorbing. So based on that criteria, let's give away some awards. Best storyline. There's one storyline that really jumps out at me. Well, I guess two, but they are intertwined. And that is the story of the Bloodline and the story of Cody Rhodes as champion, his path of finishing the story. There's been some really interesting stuff on both sides of that. The War Games match with the new Bloodline versus the old Bloodline was fantastic. I love what Cody's doing with Kevin Owens right now in the Winged Eagle belt, but rules are rules. I have a very strict rule that to really give something the best storyline award, it needs to be complete. You need to know how it ended and what the repercussions of it were. In the past, I gave best storyline to ROH champion Chris Jericho, and that was a mistake, and I apologized for it and took that award away from Chris Jericho. Also, if you watched last year's video, I wanted to give this award to the Devil, because the Devil storyline was really good a year ago. Sitting here today, it's one of the worst things I've ever seen. So we need to pick something that has completed, something that is over and we can look at objectively like this was great. There's an argument for Mariah May and Toni Storm's story of the apprentice and the master, and Mariah May turning on Toni Storm, and now we have a new Toni Storm that's a time traveler. I'm telling you. She's a time traveler. So we could say that that story's over, but I think there's one more chapter with Mariah May and Toni Storm coming down the pike. So I can't give it there. So I think I have to give this to the rise of the American Dragon as AEW champion. It was so clear that Daniel Bryan just wanted to give and not take. But that moment where he finally captured the AEW championship was amazing. And then we got the story of he will be in AEW until he loses it. Unlike when they did basically the same storyline with Ric Flair, we were all pretty sure, oh, he's going to make it to WrestleMania, and then we'll say goodbye to Ric Flair. With Daniel Bryan, because he's Daniel Bryan, I felt like every step of the way, I didn't know if he was winning. I totally believed he was going to lose it to Swerve and just never be champion. And then once he had that title, any obstacle they threw in his way, I was afraid this is the moment. This is the moment we lose Daniel Bryan. There was part of me that thought he was going to lose to Okada when they were wrestling on Dynamite. And the fact that I was so invested in this story and it had so many ups and downs and believable moments, and that ending with the plastic bag and Moxley taking out someone that they thought was their friend. Oh, fantastic storytelling. And I'm sure we will see Daniel Bryan again. So I know his story isn't entirely over, but the storyline of him as champion is complete and completed to perfection. Return of the year. A lot of heart-stopping returns this year. We saw the return of Jordynne Grace to WWE television. We had MJF come back and get revenge on that bastard Adam Cole. We saw Adam Cole come back and get revenge on that bastard MJF. There's a lot of really good stuff here. CM Punk returned twice, technically. He came back to screw over Drew, and then he came back to join War Games. I think those both count. I really, for the longest time, was going to give this to Daniel Garcia. I really believed that Daniel Garcia was given his walking papers. We weren't going to see him in AEW anymore, and he was off to NXT land. But to my surprise, he screwed over MJF and really became the wrestler that we've been waiting for him to become, even if he still does this dance every now and then. But there's a return that I have to put just a little bit higher than Daniel Garcia because I did not see it coming. And the results of it are things that really warmed my heart. I have to give greatest return to Nigel McGuinness. I did not see it coming that Nigel McGuinness would be in that Casino Gauntlet match. Despite the fact that I was so sure Nigel McGuinness was going to have a match on that card. I was like, surely Nigel will be back. They teased Nigel versus Daniel Bryan at the first Wembley show. So I thought surely we would get Nigel McGuinness in this show. And then come show day, I just forgot and was too busy thinking about Ricochet that when his music hit, Scott Holiday might have shed a tear. And then he finally got his match with Daniel Bryan. I know it was confusing with the Darby storyline, but that match with Daniel Bryan was what the match between Daniel Bryan and Nigel McGuinness right now should have been, and I loved it. Plus, he showed up at ROH Final Battle. So, three returns for Nigel McGuinness. That's one more than CM Punk, and thus, he wins this award. Finisher of the year. Just again, to restate the rules, this is not the best finisher ever. This is the best finisher of the year. This year, this finisher must have had some sort of spotlight on it that made it important. And I think there's really only one move that deserves that title. It was very clearly, to me, the Tiger Driver. They made the Tiger Driver the scariest move in the world this year. After we dropped Kenny Omega on his head and everyone was legitimately scared, the AEW locker room recognized what that meant. That we as the crowd see the Tiger Driver as terrifying and awful. So they made it terrifying and awful. It became a move that was talked about in hushed tones. A move that Ospreay could break out at any time, but should he? You could see the conflict any time the Tiger Driver was being considered. And to put that much value on a single move, in a day and age where kicking out of finishers is so common and to this point expected, like you don't expect a match to end until at least the finisher has been kicked out 2 times at this point. To have a valuable move like the Tiger Driver inserted into AEW television was a beautiful story beat. So I'm going to give it to the Tiger Driver. Non-Wrestler of the Year. This is the one I always struggle with because as a non-wrestler, I feel like I should be very particular with who I choose for this. Excalibur always stands out from a commentary perspective, but I really want to note the really amazing year that Michael Cole has had on commentary. I think we've had Michael Cole for so long that we've forgotten how great he is at telling the story that is going on in between those ropes. So I have to shout out Michael Cole as an option. There's also the world of managers. I think Prince Nana has really elevated. I once wanted to give him worst non-wrestler, and now Prince Nana has really elevated any story he's involved in. He is a vital part of anything with Swerve, and I love that. Also, I say it every year, I want to give it to Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman really dedicates himself to making sure that the story is told even at detriment to himself. He'll make himself look bad. He went through a table. He's really dedicated to the craft of telling these wrestling stories, so he was high on my list as well. Also, backstage interviewers, Renee has been killing it this year, as has RJ City, who I professed my love to last year and put him as my most underrated. But I look back at every single award that I've given out, and there's a category of non-wrestler that I tend to forget about. And that's ring announcer. And that's why I've decided that best non-wrestler goes to Sam Irving. Sam brings so much heart and realness to the sport of professional wrestling. I've said before in my worst of video that I thought WrestleMania was a bit overrated as a whole. But the moments in WrestleMania were pure gold. And a lot of those moments are accompanied by the voice of Sam Irving. Sam Irving is desperately missed right now in the WWE, and that's an incredible feat for a ring announcer to feel so important to the product. So I have to give it to Sam. We miss you. Best Promo. This award was wrapped up months ago. I knew exactly who was winning this award, and that's Jeff Jarrett's promo about the Owen Hart tournament. That was so real, and to see Jeff Jarrett, who spent most of his time as a despicable heel, calling people slap nuts and hitting people with acoustic guitars, to see him break down and explain what the Owen Hart tournament meant to him, and also to quote his friend Toby Keith, who had passed away, it is an amazing promo that made me want to see Jeff Jarrett win the Owen Hart tournament. I wanted to see Jeff Jarrett hold gold in AEW. The fact that he could do that with a single promo is an incredible feat and worthy of an award. But you can call it recency biased if you want. I had this written down as my promo of the year for so long until the breakup of the New Day. And I'm not talking about the New Day reunion, which, by the way, was great. The idea that we had this reunion segment that we knew something bad was going to happen, and we sat back and we speculated. Is it going to be Kofi that hits Big E, or is it going to be Xavier that hits Big E? Someone's going to lay out Big E and turn heel. Who works better as a face? Who works better as a heel? That we never considered that they would stay together and both turn their backs on Big E. Brilliant storytelling. And I wanted that to win. But then the very next week, when New Day took to the ring not dressed as unicorns, just as themselves, and attempted to talk, while boos echoed out throughout the arena to the point where they could not be heard. But all they were saying was, "We didn't do anything wrong." That promo is money. The fact that they could draw that much heat, and they spent that time not calling the fans fickle or anything like that, simply pleading their case of, we could have laid out Big E, and we didn't. We didn't do anything. And it leads back to how the reunion started. It started with Xavier saying, "I want you to understand that we appreciate you fans, and what's about to happen isn't your fault." They started by saying, "We care about you fans. We need to move forward. We don't want you to be upset." And the fact that it started with that care for the fans, and now the fans hate them, and the story is that they are confused as to why, because they didn't do anything to Big E. They could have hit him with a chair. They just need to move on. And it's the fans that don't accept it. The fans that used to love New Day, and now they're chanting New Day sucks. This story is so good. I would give it storyline of the year, but it's not complete. And it's also way too early for me to say that. I hope I didn't just jinx it. But in a bottle, that promo, "We didn't do anything wrong," that takes it for me. Most underrated. This is a very interesting one. It's, who's the person that's not getting the respect that they deserve? And I think there's a good argument for Liv Morgan. Liv Morgan is the champion, and yet everyone writes her off as a weak champion despite telling this really compelling story. And Liv's been great for a long time. I think we forget how behind Liv Morgan we were. Thinking back to Royal Rumbles and Money in the Bank's past. We were behind Liv Morgan because we know she's great. Now that she has the title, we're kind of forgetting because she's being a chicken heel. She's spending more time running instead of being a threatening champion. And I don't think Liv Morgan as a heel should be a threatening champion. She shouldn't be an ass kicker. She's playing her role perfectly. But for some reason, we can't get behind that idea. There's also a lot of other people. I can't believe Shotzi came back to NXT. Shotzi, I think, is criminally underrated. I still feel that way about Piper Nivens. I gave this award to Angel Garza 2 years ago. Still feel that way about Angel Garza. Everyone is still saying it about Chad Gable. Chad Gable's been given a lot of opportunities, and I think a lot of people know he's great now. I think he might fall more under the underutilized category now. I think an individual member of the Wyatt family, or the Wyatt Six, could be picked out. I think the Wyatt Six is a very cool group, but I think we're forgetting how great Joe Gacy is, and how great Dexter Lumis is in all of this mix. And then I realized that I haven't really spent much time in NXT. And I was watching NXT, and so many people told me NXT is the best show, and I thought maybe NXT as a company is the most underrated. And no, I think NXT is properly rated, but in watching NXT, it did open my eyes to one thing. The most underrated award goes to TNA. I can't believe I'm saying that either, but TNA is great now. Josh Alexander, Mustafa Ali, Nick Namath, Joe Hendry. The list goes on of fantastic names and fantastic talents telling amazing stories in very small buildings. TNA is way better than I remember it being. It's no longer that place where old wrestlers go to die. It is now a place for hungry young talent to show that they are being underappreciated. So I'm going to give my underrated award to TNA. I'm glad you switched back to TNA and are no longer Impact. Most underutilized. So this is different than underrated. This is someone that we know is great, but they're not getting the spotlight they deserve. It's not like someone who is a diamond in the rough. This is someone we recognize is a diamond, and they're not doing enough. Like, I think there was a time that this award could go to Jay White. Because Jay White is incredible, and he's been tied up with the Bang Bang Gang, not really showing how great he is as a singles competitor until recently. So he's not the most underutilized. And I think the obvious choice to this is Ricky Starks. Ricky Starks is fantastic. People were calling him the next Rock, and now we haven't seen him. But I thought that was a bit too predictable. So I tried to dig a little bit further and tried to look at people like Bianca Belair, who, despite how wonderful she is, has been stuck in the tag division, and now even with Jade gone, there's not really any discussion of her getting a title shot. She's just kind of lost in the ether. So I thought maybe I could go there. I feel like Sheamus right now is being underutilized. I love Sheamus, and we're so focused on the fact that he hasn't won the Intercontinental title that we kind of forgot that he's a ruthless ass kicker that could fall into basically any program right now. And I looked, and then I kept coming back to Ricky Starks. I was like, don't do the predictable thing. Come up with something new. But then I saw something that really explained why I couldn't get Ricky Starks out of my head. What the problem with having Ricky Starks off television this long, knowing that he's not injured, knowing that he wants to be in that ring, and knowing that he's not. I saw AEW post something about Brody Lee. And then it hit me. What's happening right now with Ricky Starks, it reminds me of what was happening to Luke Harper in WWE. That's how underutilized he is right now. He's hungry and he wants to be in that ring, and the thing stopping him is a thing we don't understand. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I understand the backstage politics or the thing that's stopping him from appearing on television, but I will say this. It better be a good reason. Because to deny someone who's in their prime the opportunity to get into that ring for a petty reason is despicable, and a lesson I thought we learned. So I have to give this award to Ricky Starks. And I know I just really hurt the mood in the room, and I have like the other half of these awards to give out, so let's take a step back, we'll reset, and let's plug in. Bit of a strange one to start things off. On Saturday, January 25th, you can see me at MagFest. Check out Panel Rooms 2. I'll be doing stand-up comedy at 10:30, so be sure to stop by and say hello. On to the wrestling plugs. SPO Wrestling returns to Harrah's Casino in Philadelphia on February 8th for Key to the City. There you will see Buffet AO challenge for the Gold Championship against the Pharaoh Face. And in a Key to the City ladder match, it is the team of Blackout, that's Ruckus and Robbie Illuminati, taking on the team of Pat Dynamite and the returning Hank, the Buffalo Wild Wings Buffalo. Yes, see the mascot for Buffalo Wild Wings in a ladder match at Key to the City. You're not going to want to miss this one, so be sure you join us at Harrah's Casino on February 8th. Links below to get your tickets now. Saturday, February 22nd, CZW returns to ACX1 Studios in Atlantic City, New Jersey for the 26th anniversary of the Combat Zone. And man, what a match we have to kick this one off. It is Rich Swann, former CZW World Heavyweight Champion, going one-on-one with WWE ID prospect Marcus Mathers. Plus, I'm happy to announce the return to the combat zone of the different boy, Jimmy Lloyd. We haven't seen Jimmy Lloyd in a CZW ring in almost 4 years, and he returns at the 26th anniversary of CZW. Get your tickets now at czwrestling.com. Most anticipated return. Now, the rule, as always, is it has to be a return that we are pretty sure is going to happen. If someone's out with an injury and we're not sure if they're going to return, unfortunately, that disqualifies them from the running. Or else I would have given this award to Big E for the last 3 years. Now, we know a lot of returns are right up the pike. Like, we're pretty sure we are going to see the return of Becky Lynch very soon, as well as Charlotte Flair. There's also a pretty good chance that Penta will be returning to the ring, but a WWE ring very, very soon. And with all these giant names that we know are coming back, I feel like one has been lost in the shuffle. One that's so anticipated that we almost forgot all about it. And all we have to do is say his name. I am most anticipating the return of Joe Hendry to WWE. Joe Hendry has made it very clear that he's got something very big coming up down the line. He says it's Eurovision, but I don't think I believe him. He has also made his state that he will, in 2025, go one-on-one with John Cena. As much as I think it'd be funny if John Cena jumped over to TNA for a match, I don't think that's where this match will take place. So, I'm predicting that Joe Hendry will be coming back in the Royal Rumble, and I can't wait for it to happen. So Joe Hendry is my most anticipated return. I know I could watch him on TNA right now. TNA is pretty underrated in my opinion, but I want to see him return to the WWE. Tag Team of the Year. This was a tough one. I think next year I need to do best and worst faction or stable, because if it was a bigger concept, a bigger faction, then I could be here talking for quite a while saying, should it be the Judgment Day? Should it be the Bloodline? Should it be the other Bloodline? But no, we have to go with just a single tag team, and tag team wrestling has been a bit spotty here and there. I mean, it's been a decent year for DIY. It's been a great run in WWE for the Motor City Machine Guns because they got there and immediately won the titles. But who really jumps out as the best tag team? Like, over in AEW, I love Private Party. But Private Party, since they've won the titles, have kind of vanished. And it seems to me like the Young Bucks, despite the fact that I said I didn't want them to come back soon, really elevate those titles. Whenever the Young Bucks hold those titles, they just become more important and get spotlit more. They do more for those tag team titles. And let me tell you, I'm really worried now that not only are they going to come back and save AEW from the Death Riders, I think there's a chance that they'll also come back and make the IWGP titles the main tag titles and turn Private Party's title reign into a secondary title. I don't want that. But despite that, you can't really deny how great the Young Bucks were this year. But screw it, I'm giving it to Sting and Darby Allin. Sting and Darby Allin, I believe, were completely undefeated, so for kayfabe reasons, they're a fantastic pick. And I went back and I watched Sting's last match, and I was like, this is the argument I'm going to present for why, despite all the negative things I said about the Young Bucks in the Worst Of video, why the Young Bucks deserve to be the tag team of the year. And then I realized, no, Sting and Darby are just awesome. Sting and Darby do some amazing things. There's not a bad Sting match in AEW. Like, for an older gentleman, Sting always delivered. So, I'm giving this to Sting and Darby Allin. Event of the Year. Hi, I'm Scott Holiday, and I'm biased. There's tons of great events. The WWE put on fantastic premium live event after premium live event, and AEW delivers with a lot of fantastic wrestling. pretty much each and every time. And there are great arguments to be made for Bash in Berlin. There's arguments to be made for All In, for All Out. However, I'm going with AEW's Double or Nothing. Why? Because I was there. I got to be in the arena while the anarchy broke out, and it was phenomenal. I really think also this is kind of getting buried because I feel like AEW's pay-per-views, they tend to be good, but they also tend to be very samey. It's a lot of like singles match on top of singles match on top of singles match. And there's a lot of variety at Double or Nothing. We got a cage match, that's where Cope jumped off the top of the cage and destroyed his leg, but we also don't let that take away from the fact that that was a great match, and Gangrel showed up. That was also the return of MJF. That was the phenomenal match between Ospreay and Roderick Strong that reminded the world that Roderick Strong isn't a comedy character. He is a fantastic professional wrestler. I'm a huge mark for Christian, so Christian versus Swerve did it for me. That was Monet versus Willow Nightingale. I loved Double or Nothing from start to finish. And I know I'm biased, but I went back and I looked at all the other events, and nothing could beat that for me, because Double or Nothing was just so much fun. If you can find a way to get to an Anarchy in the Arena match, do it. They're great times. Match of the Year. A lot of great competitors for Match of the Year. There was that Roderick Strong Ospreay match I mentioned. There was Roman versus Cody. There was Ospreay versus MJF. There was the Anarchy in the Arena match. There was Ospreay versus MJF again. There was Swerve versus Danielson. There was Ospreay versus Okada. There was Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher. There was Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher again. But in the end, I had to go with the thing that made me scream out loud. That's really the thing that pushes something over the edge for me, is that moment where I can no longer control myself. I have been completely wrapped up in the world of professional wrestling. I have forgotten that it is predetermined, and I have leaped out of my seat. And I did that for Bryan Danielson versus Will Ospreay. This got a lot of heat online because why were they saying who is the best wrestler if neither of these men have a title? But the truth is, these two are so good at wrestling that this match was just a dream match. It didn't need to be muddled by a title. Learn a lesson, AEW. Not everything has to be about a title. You don't need that many titles. But Ospreay versus Danielson, the moment where Danielson caught that surprise Psycho knee, I jumped off my couch and just screamed, "Bang!" I don't know why. Like, bang is not like a catchphrase that I use often, but something turned me into Cactus Jack for just a second, and I was completely engrossed in that match. I love Danielson versus Ospreay, so I have to give it my match of the year. Wrestler of the... It's Will Ospreay. It's Will Ospreay. Every Will Ospreay match was a contender for match of the year. He's fantastic on the microphone. Just everything he does is so entertaining. He is one of the best entrances currently in wrestling. Just the way that the crowd chants Ospreay is so strong. And the fact that he didn't need to be world title, or need to hold the world title to accomplish all this, really speaks to his talent. He had a world championship match and he put over Swerve Strong and made him look strong as a champion. As a matter of fact, Ospreay has lost a lot this year, but that has not stopped his momentum at all because he is that entertaining. This, without a doubt, goes to Will Ospreay. Company of the Year. I said it before and I will say it again. I am biased. You can look back at this list and clearly see that I am a bigger fan of AEW. Ospreay versus Bryan was my match of the year. Ospreay's my wrestler of the year. Sting and Darby are my tag team of the year. Nigel McGuinness is my return of the year. The Tiger Driver even being the finisher of the year shows my bias. But it is undeniable, even to me, that WWE was the superior company this year. I talked about a lot of great things about AEW, but AEW had a lot of misses this year. And WWE just continues to be consistent. WWE, every time I watched, just put a smile on my face as I sat back and just enjoyed. While AEW, I was always thinking, why isn't Ricky Starks on television? What's going on with Malachi Black? What's going on with Miro? Is there more backstage problems? Is there people being held down by the Young Bucks as well? What are they going to do with this Toni Storm storyline? Is she a time traveler? She's a time traveler. But WWE has actually regained my trust. Like, every time I watch WWE, I'm just sure it's going to be a good show. And then it is. I said some bad things about WrestleMania in my other video, and I honestly did find WrestleMania disappointing, but it wasn't bad. It was just not what I wanted it to be. And again, I was probably a little wrestled out by that point of my life. But WWE, as it moves to Netflix, as it continues to bring in more talent and more audience, just continues to grow and continues to be the staple and the leading force in sports entertainment. So despite everything that I've said in my personal bias, WWE, it's just better right now. But what's it gonna be in the future? Well, you gotta subscribe right here to Plus 2 Wrestling as we look forward to 2025, because next week I'm going to break out the 2025 bingo card and see if I can predict and prognosticate what will happen across the next year. And also, if you want to click on one of the videos that just popped up on screen, you can take a look at the worst of 2024, and you can also take a look at my 2024 bingo cards and see all the predictions that Dum Dum got wrong. Thank you, as always, so much for joining me, and I hope you have a great day.